In today's video, I will finally be installing my custom milled posts and beams along the back wall here at my cabin in the woods in the Pacific Northwest. It's been a long time coming. Several weeks of hard work has paid off. But before we get into what I accomplished this week, let's do a quick recap of this project so far. It all started with demolishing the back deck, which then revealed the condition of the back of the cabin. There was no gutter on that back roof, so the water was just falling off the roof, splashing on the deck, and it rotted the beams, some of the 2x6 tongue and groove flooring, and the siding. I realized I had a lot of work ahead of me, so I got started. The first thing I did was mill some hemlock logs behind the cabin. Then I went to Al's house to mill more hemlock material. To install the new beams and everything else, I needed a way to jack up the cabin. So I found some screw jacks on Facebook Marketplace. Then I created blocking material out of 4x4s known as cribbing. I assembled all that, crawled underneath the cabin, got everything in place, and then jacked it up just enough to make sure all of this was gonna work. Behind the cabin, the ground was uneven, so I needed to do a combination of digging down on one end and filling in on the other in order to achieve a level grade back there, which is going to be important for the framing and installation of standing seam metal skirting later on in the project. Through a process of digging, adding rock, and compacting, and then checking grade with the laser, then using a string line and checking my measurements and placement of the concrete forms, and then going out and getting more rock and doing this all over again, I started to establish my grade. Once my grade was established, I made the concrete forms that I'm going to use to pour the concrete in, and I also set the concrete dobbies and cut custom pieces of rebar. After a long stretch of dry weather, I headed back to Al's, and we took his truck up the hill to the top of his property, where we drug even more logs down, which I milled into the remaining timber material that I'll need for the posts and beams. The 4 beams have been dimensioned to their final size and are ready for install, while the posts are ready to be cut to custom lengths based on the final concrete grade after it dries. That brings us to the next step, which was mixing and pouring the concrete. I ended up doing this twice for reasons that were explained in that video. While the concrete was drying, I hired the Pacific Northwest gutter guys to install seamless gutters on the cabin and garage to prevent water damage in the future. And now, after allowing the concrete to dry for a total of 15 days, it's finally time to install the new posts and beams. Here we go, let's do it. Seven inches from right there. Oh, that's where the beam is going to be. That's not where my cut is. Dang it. All right, let's make our cut. That makes me feel a little bit safer now. I put that support back under there. That was a long 20-foot beam. I was gonna try and do this whole big 20-foot section at a time, but I'm just gonna do this first 8-foot first. I did that because my saw kept getting pinched right here and I was confused as to why, but I think there's a substantial amount of weight being held just by this little section of the flooring. So as soon as I take that out, I'm afraid the wall's gonna drop. But now I got that support down there, so even if it does, I got support here and support there, so this corner can't cut my head off if it falls. Yeah, it's tight right here. Everything is tight. Here's what it looks like now, all exposed. These 2x6 tongue and groove for the flooring, they look really good. That's like a fresh cut the day that they were milled, so I'm happy with that. These are all the little pieces that came out of here, so you can see how this end's really rotten, but then that end is still good. And then once you get to the bathroom wall right here, so there's the plumbing for the toilet right there. These ones are not great, even past that point where I cut. Those need to be replaced, but that's gonna have to be a future project done from the inside of the cabin. I got plans to renovate the bathroom, and when I do that, I'm probably gonna cut out the floor, and there'll be a big hole in there, and I'm gonna replace everything. And I thought I was gonna go this whole project and not have to deal with this freaking propane line, but it's a rigid pipe and I can push it in a little bit, but I don't want to push it too far, and it's gonna be in the way of the beam. So, oh my gosh, I gotta take this off of there. I got the gas supply line turned off, but I realized I only have one pipe wrench, so I gotta go get another one. Hey, what's up?
What'd you do?
What are you doing? I got the cabin all jacked up. I'm putting in the new beams, and there's a propane line gonna be right in my way.
Okay.
So I already have a pipe wrench, but I need two to get a grip on it.
I'm trying to get this room up here done, so got some painting done yesterday in the store. Just a lot of stuff going on.
Neighbor Scott to the rescue. All right, I'm gonna call it a day because it's past dinner and I'm really hungry. All right, I got all those 2x6s that were holding these temporary beams together, and if you can't already tell, as I install these new ones, the temporary beams are starting to serve no purpose, so I can remove them. But the problem is the blocks that they were sitting on are back there, and I need them to be further this way. See, like this one, for example, it's holding up the new beam, but it's not centered on that block. It's real hokey. So same thing here. It's kind of a weird situation. I gotta fix that. But despite the weird placement of all those jacks, they are holding up that side of the back of the cabin. And now this one, it's not doing anything. And these jacks right here are still holding up this old beam, and so the weight of this corner of the cabin is being held. So this area right here where the great room is, there's not very much weight, so I feel freed up to set this block in the proper position. I'm gonna have to dig this out, slide it this way, get it nice and level. Okay, at this point I've got 3 new beams in. I got 1 more to go, but now I need to do a bunch of leveling of those blocks and the beams and just a bunch of tedious stuff. So we're gonna speed through that and then I'll catch up with you guys in a little bit. Oh, look at that. Oh my gosh. Wow. This corner was really bad in here. Oh my gosh. This is the studs of the wall right there. So I'm gonna have to do 2 plates thick on top of my beam on this part. Later on, when I install a new sliding glass door here, I'm gonna rip this off and then that'll reveal the framing in there. And I'm gonna put new siding on here as well. So I'll kind of deal with that later. All right, people, check it out. I got all 4 new beams propped up. They are being held by the screw jacks now. No more temporary beam under the cabin. All the temporaries and old rotten stuff and those 2x6s, everything's here in a pile. Here's what it looks like from the back underneath the cabin. And now I'm on the opposite side. You can see how everything's propped up there. Now I'm gonna fire up the laser and just go back and forth incrementally, jacking up the cabin until I achieve the grade that I set on this stake right here. I'm in the middle of doing this and it's starting to rain. I really don't want this stuff to get wet. It only rained for a little bit. So that's pretty much level where all the jacks are right now. And that one doesn't want to go anymore. Wow, I'm really close to where I want to be. I was just moving in 16th increments. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to get there, but man, just a little way. This thing won't move anymore though, literally. That pipe's starting to bend. That's it. That's all I got. That's where I set my benchmark. I'm within a 16th of an inch, but that's right there. This beam starts to bow down here, so we're got a lot further to go here. We're 1/4 of an inch from where I wanted to be. That's really, really close though. I'm gonna call that good. Actually, if I crawl underneath here, that one's off the ground now. So is that one over there. And another one way off in the distance. So yeah, cabin's really up in the air now. As soon as I finished that cut, it started pouring down rain. It's not as bad now, but it's looking like it's not gonna stop the rest of the day at least. I just stuck this in there temporarily. It's not done yet, but that's kind of what it's gonna look like. I got a bunch more to go, but we'll see when I'll be able to finish that part. It ended up raining pretty hard last night, so I'm glad I got things covered up back here. It might have been okay since I got that gutter on there now. The water's not gonna fall off the roof and splash on the ground and really soak things like it would have before I put them on. But I got this Tyvek, so I figured I might as well cover it up. I'm just really paranoid about any of this stuff getting wet because it's been sitting in the garage staying dry, and I really want it to continue to stay dry until I finish the framing of the skirting and installation of the skirting. But with that being said, today looks like it's going to be mostly dry, so I'm going to take this off of there and finish the posts. Well, that one needs to be shorter, so I'll use this one somewhere else. Yeah, this has got to go a lot lower, but that's the idea. That's my new benchmark, the length of that post. Wherever the top of that one is, lasers should beep solid when I'm at the top of the post. So this one needs to be 14 and 13/16. 14 7/8. 14 and 13/16. 14 and 15/16. 14 and 7/8. 14 and 7/8. 15 and 8. Okay, before I forget to talk about this, I'm gonna say it right now. Okay, you see that post underneath the cabin right there, right? You see that post right there, and you see all those posts over there. Every single one of them is a non-pressure treated 4x4 sitting on a concrete block with a little piece of asphalt shingle between it as a barrier. Now, this cabin was built in the 1970s. That's 50 years ago. Those posts are not rotten, and that's why I'm doing the same thing here. This is a non-pressure treated post sitting on a block of concrete with a little piece of asphalt shingle. And I even cut these little slots in there. If water does somehow make its way in there, it will be able to work its way out. The wind can blow it, or there'll be air will be allowed to flow underneath there. So that's why I did that little notching. And that's why I'm doing things this way, because I have clear evidence in front of my eyes that this works over decades, 50 years. It's not gonna rot as long as I protect it from water damage. And once I frame all this and get it covered with standing seam metal skirting, it will not get water damaged. I will be sure of that. If it's the last thing I do, I will not let this get water damaged after all this work that I put in. Not gonna happen. Maybe I shouldn't be copying 50-year-old engineering, but that's the way it is currently underneath my cabin. So to do it a different way, I would have to redo the entire structure underneath the cabin, and I don't want to do that. Just doing this is difficult enough, and I'm gonna make it work. Time to set the cabin down on my new posts and beams. I'm gonna double check and just make sure everything's in the right position. Actually, I need to grab the long tape measure and double check the placement, but once I do that, gonna set it down. All right, we got to get the close-up for the last one. That was really holding it up. Just as I finished, I'm hearing the rain start to come down, so it's supposed to rain for several more days coming up. I gotta get this covered up. I gotta put all my tools away, a bunch of cleanup to do. But here's a closer look at what things look like now. It's pretty straight, pretty level, actually very level, super duper level with the laser. I got it. The front door closes differently now. It actually closes better, which is nice. Oh yeah, well, almost perfect. So there's going to be some settling over time, but another project is re-leveling the whole underside. One more thing I want to say before we end the video. Hopefully now you understand why I made the beams 7 by 7. In that footage of me putting them in place and doing that initial jacking up and putting them in the right position, hopefully you could see that the 2x4 that I screwed on top goes right underneath the bottom plate of the 2x4 framed wall. So the idea was remove all the rotten stuff, replace it with a new 2x4, and then everything on that side, the 2x6 tongue and groove that remains, is the flooring on the rest of the cabin. 3.5 inches is half of 7, so half of the 7-inch beam is supporting the 2x4 framed wall, and then the other half is supporting the tongue and groove flooring that sits over here. So I've removed the old beam and then replaced it with something new that supports everything. Underneath that, obviously 7x7 post supports the beam, and these concrete footings are actually 21-inch square because 7 times 3 is 21, and from what I read, you want your support for your post to be 3 times the size of the post, so that's why they're 21 inches. So that design and that plan was the goal from the very beginning. That's the way I drew it up, and that's the way that I did it. I wanted these posts up off the ground so that they're as far away from the soil as possible. So that's why these are above grade. There will be a little bit of filling going on, so grade will probably be up to here, but still it's going to make it a little bit difficult if I decide to insulate the skirting someday and try and insulate the underside of the cabin. Having this little step here is going to be kind of annoying. The way that Joe did his footings over there, I got some footage of that. Most people do it that way, but my fear is that it's really close to the dirt. So eventually, as those little needles fall from the ground, the grade starts to raise naturally. And then as it rains, dirt can wash. And I just don't like the idea of having the posts, non-treated posts, so close to the ground. I just don't like it. So That's why these are up off the ground. I didn't like the idea of digging super deep because the cabin was being supported by my screw jacks, and I felt like I was gonna undermine the base of dirt that those were setting on. The next step in this specific project is to do the framing for the skirting. I don't know when I'm gonna get to that. Could be next week or it could be several weeks. I don't know. You can hear the rain starting to come down, so we'll just have to see what happens. Appreciate you guys checking this one out. See you on the next one. Bye.